Welcome to the Balanced Blueprints podcast, where we discuss optimal techniques for health and finances and then break it down to create an individualized and balanced plan. I'm your host, John Proper, here with my co-host, Justin Gaines. In this part one episode, Justin and I talk about the psychology of food. We talk about if your diet really matters, how powerful your mind is over your diet, and how people may heal miraculously. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy. But we talked about how digestion starts with like the cephalic phase of you see the food, you smell the food, and they hinted on this. So we're just going to go a little more into it, but it was so cool because I think we may have mentioned it, but if you like the food, if you don't like the food, if you ate the food growing up, if it just smells weird to you, like all of these things, we know they affect if you like the food and you want to eat it or not, but they were showing stuff in the studies that they were looking at that like the body won't prep as well, it won't digest it as well, and it all starts with just your mentality around that single food. So not only was it like, I think we took it to the point of, digestion starts there and like, oh, you might like it or not, but they've seen in studies that it's actually, the body isn't processing it as well. And to give like an easy example, the instructor, for the longest time, he thought like when he drank milk or ate dairy, he would get phlegmy. The normal response that a lot of people report. And it got to the point where even if he just thought about it, he would get phlegmy and stuff. And that kind of triggered something in him like, oh, is it really the milk? Because a lot of the research they were looking at was just the power of the brain's perception of that food and what you think it's going to do to you that can cause that.
Right.
And he kind of dove into that psychology behind it. And, it is gone now for him. Now, who knows? A million variables could have changed. But that's the point of what they're seeing is like, if you think a food's bad for you, if you think it's good, if you don't like it, it doesn't matter because what your mind is telling your body is actually going to process it differently, which is, I think, insane.
Yeah, that is wild. That is wild. But you run into that self-fulfilling prophecy, like what you're talking about. Milk's bad for me. I think that, and then boom, milk is bad for me because my body just does that loop of I think it's bad for me, so it becomes bad for me. And
we were talking about it in the animal versus plant because you asked the vegan why a vegan diet, like why they work well for some people.
Yeah,
because we were saying that. Yeah, so this is kind of building off of that. If someone truly thinks, and this was crazy research that literally backed up what we were kind of hypothesizing, is if someone really thinks quality red meat or fish is bad for me and harming my body, it will. It actually will.
Well, I feel like that's where I definitely started to incorporate fish and seafood more into my diet. So we have salmon probably once a week now. And I wouldn't say I love it, but I definitely enjoy it more than I used to.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's part of that mindset of my mindset now is like, I'm eating this because I know all the benefits that it has and I know how good it is for me. So I'm going to get through it, even though I don't love the flavor. I don't love the texture. I'm going to get through it. And I feel like I've slowly started to like it more and more. And now this research makes a ton of sense on like rationalizing why that's happening. And it's because I'm telling myself, I know the benefits. I know how much good stuff is here. You're going to like it.
You're warming up to it. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a maturing way to come at someone in a quote unquote argument. It's like, instead of just saying this stuff's good for you and you have to eat it and the other stuff, it's like, well, maybe you need to take the approach of like, these are all of the documented studies, benefits of this thing. If you don't want to believe it, that's fine, but I can't force you, but maybe you could change someone's mind through that stuff. Like you said, after time, you've come to see the point that like, yeah, there's a lot of benefits here. That's probably the only way that's going to change your mind. It's not, no one can just sneak it into your diet, force feed it to you, or just tell you how good it is. You've come to terms yourself.
Right. Well, I don't like the odor. I don't like the texture, the flavor. Those are all the things that I had issues with because I knew the data behind it of like, omega-3 fatty acids, DHEA, so many things in there that it's the best way to get it. It's like, you might as well. You should do this, embrace a little bit of suck. We do things in workouts. We do things in work that we don't like doing because we know the benefits. I kind of just took the same approach with eating fish, and I can't say that I can directly see a benefit from eating fish, but it's not. A lot of these health things aren't short-term gains. They're long-term. How is it going to play out? What's that all going to look like in the long term? How's your mental psyche going to maintain? Are you going to get Alzheimer's? Are you not? There's a genetic element there, but what part of it's environmental? What part of it's nutrition based?
Yeah. Cover all your bases. And then this goes along the same line of kind of the psychology behind it and how you view food, but other things that we didn't think about, not just if you like it, smell it or whatever, but memories behind it, like your culture behind it. If you had food scarcity growing up. So a lot of people, we look at why overeating is such a big thing. And we obviously in this podcast always harp on the industrial processed addictive food because that is a huge element. But, people that may have been from certain areas or cultures or just growing up where food was scarce, like you were programmed when young to eat any and everything you had. And that doesn't just go away as you get older, like that's a thing that happened when you're young. So you see food as you get older and you finish everything on your plate because it's kind of ingrained. I might not get food for a while.
That's an interesting one too.
Yeah. I mean, there's, we're getting into, I guess the point of this podcast being psychology and perception of food is basically getting into what we've said before of diet. Does it matter? It's hard to say, does your diet matter? Because someone would run with that and be like, I'm going to eat McDonald's until it's like, no, not that. But if you're eating whole foods, quality foods, does it matter how much carbs? Does it matter how much fat? Does it matter if it's vegetarian? If it's, I still have preferences and I think there's the best ones, but
there's some sort of lower limit where the threshold is of like, these are the basics you need to do. Cause this, below this line is unhealthy, getting less than 5,000 steps a day, 10,000 is optimal. Right. So, then we're picking a number out of thin air, but like, okay, if we're doing less than 5,000, like you're going to see issues. And, if you're eating McDonald's for every single meal or the equivalent, you're going to see issues. There's literally a documentary about that, but, looking at things that way of, there's a minimum threshold, but above that, you're saying the research is saying it's more psychological. It's more, what's going on.
I think so. Yeah. Based on the research, I mean, that's kind of what I'm concluding because what is 10,000 steps versus 11,000? You know what I mean? But that's the thing is over 95 years, or let's say 85, that extra 1,000 steps every day will add up. You know what I mean? So will it add up to another 30 years? I don't know. But so it's not to say it doesn't make a difference, but then the other things, do come into play heavily. And that's the brain and your thoughts. And let's see. So I got a bunch of notes here. Yeah.
So interesting.
Dude, that's why I think in a field with, and this, I've went into nutrition, I got out of nutrition, I'm back in nutrition. And I think that's just what's causing me to switch around so many times is the people in the field just seem stagnant or ignorant or so focused on the food. And that's maybe why this is so interesting because it's like this illness is limitless. Like when you start to explore the mind and the brain and you start to see things that like when you work with a client, you're like, how did that work? Or how did that not work? And it starts to almost get explained through this. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's really what we're talking about here with the brain is the human element.
Yeah.
Because the other, practices are focused on individual areas. So you're looking at nutrition, very black and white. You're looking at workout, very black and white. But because we're humans, it's not black and white. And what makes us human is our brain, the ability for us to process things the way we do, the way that we can think about things. The fact that we're not just monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go into a couple, I think this is actually a good next step, a couple of research studies they did that just back up the stuff we've been saying. So, this one was wild. They didn't tell you about this one. The first one is called Mind Over Matter. Mental training increases physical strength. If anyone wants to look it up, it's by Aaron Shackell. But in this study, I don't know the exact numbers, so I gave you the name. You can look it up. But there's two groups of people. One that was the control group and did nothing. They lived their normal life. And one group that visualized strength training for a certain period of time. And at the end of the study, the control group had no change in physical strength. And the group that just visualized it actually had an increase in physical strength from the start to the end of the study. And they didn't do any training. The only thing they did was the mental training behind it.
No kidding. So no actual workouts.
No actual workouts. So pretty wild. And, I hear that. I'm like, okay, well, it's one study. And, whatever.
Well, how much gain are we talking about here? Did it get into
We gotta look. We gotta look. But we can look it up at the end.
Because if their bench max was say it was 150, it's like their bench max went to what, 151, 152. I mean, it can't be. You're not putting on a plates doing this. No. I think it's more markers of health for strength. So not like probably the amount of weight they can lift, but like the markers you see when you increase your strength training, those beneficial markers in the body went up. Okay.
So not as much as
neurological and endorphin.
Yeah, and the benefits of strength training, as if you have, like, when your body has more muscle mass on it, different signals are going throughout your body. So I think they were seeing more of those signals versus like I was able to actually lift 100 more pounds.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So it's not necessarily a quantitative thing. It's more of a qualitative.
Yeah.
Research study. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense then. Okay.
Yeah.
So you get the benefit. You get some of the benefits of working out by just visualizing working out.
Just by visualizing. So I mean, why not combine the two? When you're working out, this is a whole nother episode, but make it a positive experience to yourself. Visualize you lifting the heavy weight that you want to lift. Psych yourself up, quote unquote. And you're kind of getting both. You're seeing that you're going to lift that weight, and you're actually lifting that weight. I mean, that's a double whammy, which is pretty crazy.
Well, I'm even thinking just. I'm thinking more injury recovery, aging populations, populations like a group that literally can't work out. They're bedridden from an injury, from old age, whatever it is. This is suggesting that their first step isn't actually working out. Their first step is visualizing doing it. And that'll get them headed in the right direction.
Yeah. That's what throws me through a loop too, though, of like, you start to think like, man, can I just think things into existence? Because you see stuff like that.
I mean, I believe in that stuff. I have no problem telling you I believe in, law of attraction, that sort of stuff. I completely believe in that. Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of stuff in my life has come as a result of visualization and, just engaging that part of your brain.
You don't chase, you attract, you know what I mean? So it's crazy. But we'll backtrack a second here because this is what we were talking about earlier. I have another study that relates to that, but there was actually a scientific study. It's called psychosomatic response to food intolerances. And this is going along with when I said the instructor had that dairy intolerance. And it's a research study where you actually can give yourself food intolerances. He was saying that most food intolerances, not talking allergies here, but just like a gluten intolerance or a dairy intolerance is actually coming from the psyche, where it's not. Now we have other things that come into play too, of gut health and leaky gut. But, that they were just in the study showing the power of, you can actually give yourself, if you tell yourself that food does not work with me well, like the easiest example is if someone says they're eating quality red meat, they're like, I just can't do red meat. And you're like, that is one of the least irritating foods. So that's when it kind of raises a flag of, if someone says they have an intolerance to that, you're like, all right, we can look at maybe some things like stomach acid, but if that's all good, that's in your head. So crazy.
That's interesting. And I know, like in the documentary The Secret, which is about the law of attraction, they interview people who had back injuries, had like massive injuries, and one of their ways to recovery was they literally just visualized their body healing it and fixing it. And so it's the inverse of what you're talking about here, where you're telling your body you have a problem, telling your body you have a solution. But both of them, because your brain doesn't know negative and positive. Your brain doesn't operate in the negative. You can't tell your body, if I tell you don't think about an elephant, the first thing you do is you think about an elephant. Mm-hmm. Like your brain doesn't recognize the negative. Yeah. So your brain's going to do whatever you tell it to do, whether it's truly outcome positive or negative.
And that's why this research is so interesting, because there's so many rabbit holes. Like maybe you're explaining how people heal and it was unexpected, or you're showing how the dialogue in your head is so important because that's what you're listening to every day, and the downstream effects of that. We're just talking surface level right now, but he gets into, and we can get into, like, the exact pathways of how this stress affects what pathways. And it explained so much to me, because I had a lot of people in my life that relatively thin, relatively in good shape, nothing that you'd look at and be like, oh, that's weird that you have fatty liver disease or that you have thyroid problems, and when I saw this information through the course, I was like, insane how stress works on certain pathways, and how easily it's related to the most common problems these days of low thyroid production or fatty liver disease. And it was just like crazy to me, because growing up in a family where no one was overweight but still had those problems, it was so strange. And they never got answers, because this part of, I wouldn't say it's new, but it's really emerging into the general population now of how, well, it is new. Like, psychoneuroimmunology is very new. There's like one school that lets you major in it right now. So how the mind affects the immune system and our hormones is very new, but it's crazy.
Well, the other thing that my mind goes to is like the religious element to it. Like, every major religion, you hear stories of people saying, I was miraculously healed, or this thing, I started praying for this and then it came to me and it happened. And I feel like it's because, I'm not trying to play God here, but if you're praying to a higher power and you have a consistent habit of doing that. In doing that, you're going to be naturally visualizing, anticipating, thinking about it, priming your mind, doing all the things that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're asking for healing and your brain is telling you that, and you firmly believe, because that's the other thing you'll hear with every major religion, you can pray all day, but if you don't firmly believe it, it's not. Yep. God's not going to answer that prayer because you don't believe that God can fix it. And so this argument there is, it's not necessarily saying that it's not God, but the science behind it. The only thing that science can track is the neurological response and what's happening in the brain. But it's interesting that those two things can correlate together and show a similar outcome.
And I think it's that topic of religion too is, again, so many rabbit holes, but so interesting, is I've been on every spectrum, I think, of that, like finding what I believe and want to follow. And to me, I'm getting to the point where it's so crazy that they separate them, because so people can believe what they want. I'm not saying this is the answer, but I'm almost thinking that whatever you believe, the creator has created a human body that can heal itself so crazily. So it's like, yes, you can pray to God, but it's not almost like God is healing you. It's God gave you the abilities to heal your body. And that's like kind of what I'm seeing through research. That's just, again, just what I believe.
Yeah.
But
well,
it's
I would agree with you on that. Like almost every single major religion, not almost every major religion, talking about the big four.
Yeah.
The way I kind of view it, and is a non-contentious way to view it, but I think everybody should believe in some sort of higher power and have that. But in all the major religions, if you view it in that perspective, those major religion books then become manuals and storytelling to teach you lessons. And like you're saying, it's teaching you to use what you were given, which is your mind, to be able to visualize and be able to do all these things and see through, the hard time that you're in, visualize a positive time out, and your prefrontal cortex is going to establish that, okay, it's not your prefrontal cortex, your reticular activating system will sit there and just constantly look out for things that get you closer to that. Yeah. It's mind-blowing that it does it even internally. Like, it's not just exterior things you're looking at. It's internally. By the sounds of it, it's literally changing your microbiomes, your digestive system. It's changing your neurological responses. Yeah. Got to have some sort of hormonal impact. Like, this is mind-blowing, and we'd be crazy not to bring in the spiritual element, because there's clearly some sort of interconnection here.
That's the exact reason we are bringing it in. I didn't plan on going into this because I'm not even prepared for that topic. That's a huge one, but it's just, you look at this stuff and you think about some of the power of these things, and you go, that's just insane. How, it's like no explanation other than there is no explanation. You know what I mean? It's like, it blows your mind.
Right. So, yeah. Don't try to explain it because it's not explainable.
Right.
Because if you try to explain why does your brain, when you smell something or do all these things, or you tell yourself it's bad, why does my brain then turn around and make my body say, yes, this is bad, let's not have it? It's like, we can spend all day trying to explain the why does it happen, but it's really not. This is more of an observation style of, this is what's happening. It's cool. How can we harness that power? Let's not worry about why it's happening.
Yeah, I know. Just get the benefits from it. And then if you always want to dive into, like, it's fun and look into it. And I'd say we'll probably, going through this, it's brought up a much better conversation than it always does. So we'll do a part 2 of, I would say part 2 will really get into the pathways of a lot of how the hormones are affected, how the thyroid's affected. This one we'll just kind of keep brushing over. Another one about how the mind affects exercise. So there was a study of, again, 2 groups. Each group was they were workers in a hotel that cleaned hotel rooms after people used them. They told one group of cleaners that the cleaning you do is actually enough exercise is just like a good enough exercise as a workout or something else. And they didn't tell the other group anything. They just let them do their normal job. The group that they told that your job, your cleaning is good exercise as a workout, they saw health markers improve versus the other group, just because they had the thought in their mind that what I'm doing is physical activity, is getting me healthier. Is just that thought made a difference in their health, which is wild, being told that. It kind of goes on to the play too of like someone giving you positive encouragement or telling you can do this, or
I was just gonna say positive self-talk. If you sit there and say, "Oh, my workout wasn't good enough today," it's gonna have made it worse. It's gonna have a less impact on you than if you sat there and like, you know what, I tried my best, I put everything I could into it, and I feel like I did something today. I did enough.
I'm gonna get stronger. Yeah, I feel it. Like, so the other day I did a workout and I went heavier. Not so again, it plays into the reasons why you do it, but I usually go into it with not good reasons. So I was like, I'm going heavy today just to work some things out, which is okay as well. But it's heavy for the day to day. It's heavy because that's what I'm training with. But when I put it into perspective of like, whoa, no, this is maybe half of what I can really do as a 1 rep, it felt so much lighter on my back. And the only thing I changed was that one thought in my head. So
Well, the funny part too on this same topic is we had a strength trainer in high school for our athletics, and there was a point at which my max had capped out. And what he had done was I think I had a 45 on each side, and that was it. And what he did is he took off the 45 and he put 2 25s on. And so more weight, but it looks like it's less because it's the smaller plate.
Yeah.
And I could do it, powered through it, no problem. And he would constantly do that with people where he was like, listen, you walk up to that bar and you have 2 45s on there, one on each side. Your mind's telling yourself that it's heavy.
Yeah.
You throw 2 25s on, you're like, oh, those aren't that heavy. It's no big deal.
Literally.
But you have 10 more pounds on there.
I know. It'd be fun to just like put 10 after 10 after 10 and not even count. And you just you're like, easy.
Well, and he would do that with people. So he would do it. He'd have you put on a bunch of weights, and you'd have, your plates would be 6 plates deep.
Yeah.
He'd be like, all right, do it. And he's like, there's 2.5s in there. There's 10s. He would alternate so you couldn't actually calculate.
Yeah, it's so mismatched.
Stupid. It would look so dumb. But
it's mind
it was
games.
one of those things that it's like, it allows your brain not to calculate, so you don't even know what you're doing. And he would get people to hit axes that they just have never hit before because they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. So imprisoned by like our own doubts. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's like exactly what you said. It's like 2 plates, like, or 4, 2 on each side. You're like, that's heavy. It's like, but I can do 3 plates on each side. You know what I mean? It's so then, it's, I don't know. It's cool. And I think it's a thing that we know and we see every day, but we don't harness the power of.
Well, it's easy. I think it's easier to program the negative.
Oh yeah. Well,
it's easier to complain. It's easier to say I can't do this than to, because to get in the mindset of I can do this, and maybe this is just a me thing, but if I say that I can't do something, I just accept that as fact. If I say that I can do something, why? How do I know that?
Yeah.
Look for rationalization.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Reasoning behind it. You'll accept it. If you're told you can't do something, you usually accept it. And that's why there's all the fear of rejection, and there's a lot of depression, anxiety, all that stuff. And it's because if somebody says something negative to you, you say, oh yeah, I must be garbage. But if somebody comes over and praises you, it doesn't have the equal effect that it does somebody saying like, hey, you didn't do a good job here, versus somebody saying you did do a good job. Those two things, for me at least, don't have the same equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down as like negative confirmation holds way more weight than positive confirmation. And we're going to look into that because that's just, it's
I feel
true.
like you need more positives to equal the same as a negative,
Definitely. And I imagine we know that biologically we're trained to look for the thing that's killing us, the negative. I imagine it's got to go deeper than that too, though. So that'll be interesting. We'll jump into that because because the fact that we know that should beat that. I know.
Right.
So
you get into the logic versus the emotion piece here. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that I'm always trying to avoid danger, but why don't I celebrate when I find the food?
Right.
Why don't I celebrate when I find life?
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. We'll do that's fun. We'll do one more. I think I have one last study. And the only point is to bring up fun things here and to show that there's actually studies behind this. But this study called Mind Over Milkshake, Mindset, Not Just Nutrients, determines ghrelin response. Ghrelin's that hunger hormone. So I mentioned this one to you briefly the other day, and this is two groups of people they brought in for a study. One group got a drink. On the label, it said like an indulgence, sweet chocolatey drink, whatever it may be. Other group got the same exact drink, but it said like healthy fit shake or, whatever the label on that one was. Both groups drank them. And they timed like what their body did after a certain amount of time after drinking them. And they showed just the responses in hunger hormones, insulin, like blood sugar, and how much better it was, even though the same exact drink. But the group that thought it was a healthy drink, the food label said, protein, no fat, blah, blah, versus the one that said tons of sugar, tons of fat, like made a completely different response in their body. It's just wild.
It is insane. And it's funny, it just occurred to me that what we're talking about is the placebo effect too. Like why the placebo effect works. Why can I take a sugar pill and the pain goes away? Why can I take a sugar pill and I feel like whatever the case may be.
It shouldn't even be called the placebo effect. It should be called like the power of the brain effect or the power of the mind effect, because the placebo almost downplays how crazy it is.
Well, I think it's because the placebo effect was understood under this is a fake pill, it's a placebo. So does it have the benefit? And now we're starting to realize that placebo effect applies more than just a sugar pill. It applies to so many more things. But it's mind-blowing that so your insulin and blood sugar levels have different responses.
And the hormone ghrelin. And I'd have to look at the studies.
Right, yeah, all the other ones. I'm just saying those are the two for me to those I can easily understand, very easily conceptually understand of your blood sugar and insulin are directly related. So blood sugar is probably the simplest one. If I eat sugar, my blood sugar should go up. But this is saying that they ate sugar and their blood sugar didn't go up or didn't spike, at least.
Thanks for listening to our podcast.
We hope this helps you on your balance freedom journey.
Please share your thoughts in the comments section below.
Until next time, stay balanced.